Okay, hello everyone. I'm Zhao Chang, and I'm going to share my own experience on how to do literature review and paper reading. And my research is about computer reading and AI research. So the content is mostly based on my own experience about AI research, but I think they can also apply to many other topics in computer science. And three also the contributor of content, and three will join us online later. Okay, so the first question is, why do we need to do literature review? Can we just do something interesting we found and without relying on existing works? Anyone want to share some thoughts on this? Yeah, I'll give you a real example on why we need literature review. This is a review comment I received on one of my paper submissions to CVPR conference this year. And the reviewer comment that the author missed to address the concerns about novelty compared to other papers published 2 years ago. And this is very common case when you can have during the review process. And due to this comment, the final rating of our paper is reject. And this is the lowest rating we can have during the review process. If you have one reject recommendation from one of the reviewers, the survival chance of your paper is almost zero. So one of most common reasons to be rejected for a paper is that your paper is not novel, there is a similar paper, and this is a very common review we can have during the review process. So, and such comments are very difficult to address during the revision or the rebuttal stage. So we need to address this, to avoid this from the very beginning. And that's why we need a literature review to find all the relevant paper and try to do some novel things compared to them. And literature review is the first step of our journey of research. And the goal is to find, the goal of research is to explore something new, something unknown. And literature review is to get a map of the known work so that we can find a path from known to unknown. And literature review is this map on your hand. So we first need to have this map before we start in our journey. And this figure is generated, and maybe it's not the best illustration of the research because in this figure we only have one path, but in real research we can have multiple paths, and the journey is not very dangerous like this. If we fall from some path, we will probably find another path, and which may be even better. And this is a typical life cycle of research. We start from choosing or defining some tasks and design a method to address some limitation of existing work and to conduct some experiments to validate the usefulness of our method. And then we write a paper and do some revision or rebuttal. And most of literature search and literature review will happen at the first stage. And we need to get a necessary context for research. And we may need a few iterations between the task formulation and the literature review to have a better idea what's our task we are going to work on. But we may also need some small amount of literature search on the following stages. For example, if we want to design our method, we may need to look at some relevant paper to get some inspiration and ideas to how to design the model. And or when we want to do the experiments, we need to identify the method to be compared with, and how to design our experiment table with the evaluation settings. And then we need to find some relevant paper. And at the writing and rebuttal, sometimes we also need to find some handy evidence to back or support our statements. Okay, so much work to do literature review, and it can be a very boring and time-consuming process. So I assume some of you are just starting your research journey on your own project and start doing literature review. So how many of you found it very difficult to read a single paper? Maybe it may take more than 2 hours to read a single paper. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very common, and that's why we need different strategies to read the paper and to do this literature review. At this stage, for the most of the body of papers, we only need general reading. We do not look at the details. And for a small amount of papers that are very closely related to our own method and experiment, we can look at in more detail. And we have also different structuring strategies to handle these two body of literature. For most of the literature, we only need to organize the paper without considering our own research. That's what I call untargeted structure. But for when you are writing your own paper, you may need to reorganize the literature in the context of your own research. For example, in your related work section in your paper, provide a context for your own research. That's what I call targeted structure. And I will give more details on this thing. Okay, before we read the papers and structure the papers, we need to find all the relevant papers. We need to do the literature search. And this is very important because at this stage, we want to find all the relevant papers. If we miss something here, it may lead to the reject comment at the beginning. And this is my approach. I will start using search on Google Scholar by using different keywords. And for example, it's just something related to a topic. If I'm working on video generation, I will search video generation, video synthesis, or image generation. Try to use different and slightly modified keywords at this stage. And after search, I can find a speed paper as the starting point of my literature search. Then there will be two directions to expand the body of literature. One direction is to look at the paper cited by this speed paper. And for this, we can just look at the reference sections of the speed paper. And the other direction is to look at the papers that are citing this speed paper. And for this, we can use the cited by function on Google Scholar. And on both of this direction, we can have some recursion and try to build a long chain or build a network of literature. And by repeating this, repeatedly look at the papers cited and papers citing the speed paper. And probably we need to repeat the whole process with a different speed paper multiple times. And the end condition will be, if we are seeing no new paper are coming in, that probably means we can end the search. And this process can be very time consuming, very boring, but be patient. And my experience is that it usually will be sufficient if we repeat the whole process with 5 different speed papers. It's just a graph first search on graph. Okay, so how to choose the speed paper as your starting point? And for this one, it doesn't matter actually, because if we consider the literature network as a graph, all the papers in the graph, they are connected to each other as long as the paper is a peer-reviewed publication, because they need to set each other. So it doesn't matter which one you choose. You will finally find all the papers. You will repeat them and repeat them. Plus, the choice of the seed paper will affect the efficiency of this process. How many iterations you need to finish this search process. And here are two good tests of the that can be used as seed paper. One is dataset paper, and the other is survey paper. For dataset paper, because all the methods that are using this dataset to work on this topic, they will set this dataset paper. And that will be a very good starting point. And the other one is survey paper. Survey paper will summarize all the related paper published before the date of the survey paper. So these two types of papers, they will provide a very good starting point on different directions. For dataset paper, they will provide a very comprehensive summary of papers on this direction. And for survey paper, they will provide a very good starting point for this direction. And usually we can combine them. Yeah, and this is the function of tool scholar, cited by. By this, you can look at the papers that are citing this paper. Okay, and apart from the dataset paper and survey paper, we can also start from some method paper, from just a random paper. And how to decide whether it will be a good seed paper or not. And there are some indicators at least here that can be an indicator of a good paper, but this can be very subjective and you need to make your own judgment. The first indicator is that whether it's from a top conference or top journal. And for this, you can look at the ranking of the conference on this core ranking. Usually for core A star and core A conference, we consider it as a top conference. And this is because for top conferences, for papers on top conferences, they usually want to cite the paper on other papers also published on top conferences. So, for example, for papers on CVPR, IPCV, ECCV, they are more connected to each other on the graph. And from top labs and top researchers, and this is very domain specific, and you can find it. You will find it well written. And for the open source code model hyperparameters, that will be a good indicator, especially for AI research. And because if the model and the code is open source, there will be many people having tested the code, and it will also be more useful for you. And simple and effective. This is because if the method in this paper is very complicated, it usually means the result is not strong enough, and the author needs to use a lot of tricks to make it work. So look at the papers that are simple and effective. That usually means they are a good paper. And also some other indicators such as good writing and high impact citation. Yeah, but all these are very subjective. You need to choose yourself. Okay, after doing the literature search on this graph, you probably will end up with more than 100 papers, a very long list of papers. So how can we read it? And it will very time consuming, and it's not feasible to read them all at this stage. And that's why we need different strategies. And for this part, we just read them in general. We don't care about too much of details. And we also structure the literature without considering our own research. And this is what I call general reading. And for general reading, the the process is look at the paper and try to find the answer for a few questions. What is the task, what is the motivation, what's the method, and what's the result? They are try to use very simple sentence, maybe a single sentence, to answer each of the questions. And for the task, we can answer the question by looking at what's the input and what's the output of the model. We don't care about the model in the between. We don't care about how the input are processed to become the output. We only care about what's the input and what's the output. And we may also look at what are the training data and what are the testing data, and what's the ground truth, what's the evaluation metrics. This more in more details, but usually these questions are coupled with the task formulation. So it will be useful to look at it. And what's the motivation? This one will be answered at this stage using very simple sentence. What's the high-level gap the method wants to fill? For example, if the method is, it can be something like this paper wants to improve the efficiency of large language models. That's enough, that's sufficient. And what is the method? And for generating, we only need to find the answer using a few keywords, such as the model is using CNN transformer and it's trained with reinforcement learning. That's enough. That is sufficient. We do not care about how much layers are in this CNN transformer. We only use keywords. And what's in the result? What are the data sets, and whether this paper achieved a state-of-art performance, and how much performance is improved, and how much GPUs are needed. This one maybe in more detail, but it's very practical and useful question. So I leave it here. Okay, and after we read through this long list of papers, we need to provide a structure or table to organize the paper in your literature review. And this is the approach I do it. And the first thing is to decompose the task and the methodology, because there are two different bodies of literature. For example, if I'm doing something of video generation using diffusion model, video generation will be my task, and the diffusion model will be my methodology. There are two different bodies of literature. And usually, papers that are working on the same task will be more relevant, because you, in some cases, you need to compare with them. And the goal of this untargeted structuring is to group papers along different dimensions. And here I list a few possible dimensions. And that's something like the time of publication, what's the input, output, the modality, the model, and the code availability, and so on. And this is also topic dependent, and you can be creative at this part. And the goal of this is to try to form a coordinate using this dimension. For example, if we have 3 dimensions of training or model and the modality, you can form a coordinate and put the papers you have searched into this coordinate. Then you can try to find whether there is some pattern of this cluster of existing works. This is very useful because for your paper, for your research, you will also think about how to position your own paper in this same coordinates. And usually, your own paper will need to be slightly outside the cluster of existing paper, so that you can have some novelty on at least one of the dimensions. And here are some other suggestions. There can be many more dimensions, and focus on recent papers, especially for AI research, because the field is developing very rapidly, and recent papers within 2 years or 3 years, they are more informative for you to design your own method. And yeah, and this is what I call untargeted structuring. It means when you are organize the paper into a table or into this coordinate, you don't need to think about too much about your own research. But when you are writing your paper, in the later stage, or when you are designing a new method, you need to think about the targeted structure. You need to position, or you need to change the structure of the literature to provide the context of your own research. For example, if you are working on improving the efficiency of diffusion model for video generation, maybe you need to focus on the dimension more on the how existing work can achieve a different method in existing work that can improve the efficiency of diffusion models, such as using different sampling steps, just some examples. Yeah. And this is an example of the untargeted structuring. This is a table I copied from a survey of human motion generation. And we can see that it's a table just listing all the relevant paper and provide different columns corresponding to different dimensions, such as the venue and the data representation as the input and the model, condition, and data sets. Okay, before we go into detailed reading and critical reading, any questions? Yeah.
In your coordinate model, 3 coordinate example,
yeah,
how did you assign the magnitude of each point?
Yeah. I think the coordinate, the dimension is discrete. It's not a continuous axis. It's a discrete axis. For example, along this dimension, we just have different models such as diffusion model, large language model, and generative adversary network, and so on. Yeah, they are discrete points on the axis. Yeah. Okay, and general reading is for the first stage, before you start your own work. Once you have started your own work, designing your own method, conducting your experiments, you need to look at the paper in more detail. And especially, it's very important to look at the paper that are closely related to your work. That means, for example, if we are using, if you are going to compare it, especially if you are going to compare with this method, if this method will show in your experiment table as a self-R method compared with, that means you need to read it in very detail. And for this part, we need to ask ourselves more questions and be more critical. Because for general reading, we only need to find the answers from the paper. We do not have our own opinion or our own thinking. But for this part, we need to be critical and to have more of our own opinions on this. And I will go through these questions. The first group of questions are what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of the paper. And this can have many aspects. The most common aspects are the motivation, whether the motivation is reasonable, whether the method is novel, whether the result is significant, and whether the writing reviews. And for these two questions, I would recommend you to think from the perspective from reviewers. Just imagine yourself as a reviewer of this paper. How will you review this paper? This is very helpful because if you are a researcher, you will review paper at some time later. And so for this, we can look at the reviewer guideline from the conferences or journals, such as the SLR, URIP, CVPR reviewer guidelines. And this is a paragraph I copied from URIP's reviewer guideline. You can see that the guideline provides many questions you can email, and it also grouped into originality, quality, clarity, significance, and so on. Many questions. The guideline is very long. You can look at yourself and try to think from the perspective of the reviewer. And for this part, I found that for beginners, it's more difficult to find the weaknesses of a paper. And you can think about this as a critical reading. You do not need to believe everything the author is saying. So try to find the weaknesses, and that will usually lead to research gaps and your own design and new method. That's very useful. And if you are more experienced, it's more difficult to find the strengths, because for experienced researchers, if you look at a paper, you'll find a lot of limitations, and this paper doesn't mean anything to you. Yeah, but usually we need to find both of them, strengths and weaknesses. Another useful thing is that we can use open review as a source of learning. And this is very widely used in AI research paper review process. And some of the conferences, such as SLR, will release all the review comments and rebuttal and all the discussion on this platform. For example, the about part, they are the comments from the reviewer, and this part is the response from the author. You can look at this and try to have a sense of dynamics between reviewers and authors. You can also post your own comment as a public comment. But don't do that too much, because everybody will see that. Okay, so next group of questions in detail reading is how the method works in detail. For AI research, for deep learning models, I found it's very useful to think the methodology part from the perspective of data structure and the tensor shape, because all the deep learning models are handling some tensors. So if we look at the tensor shape of the input and output of each module, we will understand what this model is doing. And try to understand the tensor shape and each dimension of the tensors using intuitive understanding. What does each dimension mean? What's the physical meaning? What's the intuitive meaning? And I'll give an example here. And in video models, in video generation or video understanding, it's very common to have a tensor with 5 dimensions. And if you look at the dimensions, usually you don't, there are just some symbols, EC, HWD. What you need to do is to try to understand these dimensions, understand the physical meaning or intuitive meaning of these dimensions, such as it means sketch, it means channel, it means the height or width and the length of the video. If you understand the physical meaning, you will understand what the model is handling. And it also will help you to understand the process if we look at how the dimensions change at each step. For example, if we are looking at some attention layers, there can be some affinity matrix. And if the dimension of the matrix is HW by HW, it probably means it's a spatial attention, because HW is just the multiplications of height and width. And if the matrix is of a shape T by T, it probably means it's a temporal attention, because it works on the lines of the videos. Another question while reading, to think about what's the difference between the story the author type and what the authors are actually doing. For this part, we need to be critical because they can be different sometimes. I'll give you an example for this, and this is a paragraph I copied from a paper. And what the author is saying that they are doing some topographic embedding to automatically learn and store the geography information into the different pixels in the tensor. And this is the interpretation of the author. But after I read the paper and carefully read the paper and look at their method, I found that it's actually just a learnable positional embedding. If you are familiar with transformer models, this is widely used. So this is something the author is actually doing. You need to separate these two things. Try to find the fact, try to unveil the fact before the story of the author. This part is the interpretation of the author. I'm not criticizing this paper because this one is also insightful. It's meaningful, and because it actually, maybe it's also providing some topological embeddings. It provides a domain-specific insight for this methodology. It's insightful, but sometimes it can be confusing for you to understand the method. So you need to try to separate these two things. Okay, let's summarize how we can read a paper with critical reading. The first thing to look at is what's the problem, whether the problem is important, and whether the motivation is clear enough. The second thing is whether the method is novel, whether the method is simple and elegant. And the third thing is the result, whether it's improved and whether the result is generalizable across datasets and scenarios. And these are the three pillars of a good paper. And next thing we need to think about is the connections between these three things. Because for some papers, they can be very strong at each individual pillar, but there is no clear connection between them. For example, some papers are using a new model for this task, and without explanation, without why we are using this, just using a new model for this problem. So it's helpful to think about what the connections between these three components. Why this matter for this problem, why this matter leads to this result, and what does the result mean to the problem. This is very, I think this is even more important, and that's because the insights are from the connections. They are not from individual parts. Okay, the last question we want to answer from literature review is how to identify research gaps so that it can inform how you develop your own method. For this one, we can try to ask ourselves, can you find any trends from your review, and what are the limitations of the existing paper? There is a saying that keep your feet on the ground and your eyes on the stars. And in research, technical knowledge, they are the stars. And empirical results, they are the ground. So we can have different two approach to try to identify research gaps. The first one is top-down thinking from stars to ground. We first look at the stars. Is there any new models that haven't been used in this task? That's how we're trying to make it work. And try to find some insight why we can use this model for this problem. And the other way of thinking is bottom up, from the ground to the stars. We start from analyzing the result of the existing method and try to identify any pattern from the feeder cases. And we try to fix these feeder cases using some models. And while you are fixing these feeder cases, you will develop a novel method. And most importantly, creative. This is the most important thing in research. Okay, I'll stop here. And for the following part about how to manage references, Sri will introduce to us maybe at 3 p.m. We can have a break here. Any questions?
Maybe do you guys have any topics you want to touch on to a demo about how to do the literature review with your topics?
Well, I'm exploring simple like knowledge graph construction from text and documents. Where do you suppose I should be using that?
Probably you can start from temporal reasoning, graph, knowledge graph, using this keyword as your search keyword and try to find a seed paper and use that one to expand your literature.
Any other questions?
I'll give you an example. I've done a preliminary scan, and I came up with probably 3 or 4 key papers. But it wasn't as thorough as you suggested in your method. So, and my biggest concern was that I've missed something, that someone's done what I intend to do. So, this was really a comment. I'm glad you gave this talk because you've given me a way of being a lot more thorough and being recursive, and, as you say, iterating through the search, even though it's very tedious.
Yeah.
But that's reassured me a lot now because I can go back and maybe find things that I missed along the way. I've used Google Scholar, but I generally use just, should you use a phrase, sentence, or just a series of keywords in your search, in the search bar?
I think it doesn't matter if you use only a few words, it will have a broader scope, and if you use a sentence, it probably have a narrow scope. But it will finally lead to some seed paper. If you can just find a paper and expand along that paper, it doesn't matter, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question is, should I put a cutoff date, a filter on my results by using a cutoff date? So only take the last 10 years, for example.
Yeah.
Is that advisable?
I think this is domain specific. For AI research, we usually only look at paper within 3 or 5 years, or maybe 2 years even. Okay. Yeah. But for some other domains, it may be have a longer. You need to look in more older papers, and it also depends on whether the paper is significant or not. If this paper is very important, such as attention, such as transformer in AI, that was from 80 years ago, but it's still we need to set that paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working in the AI area, AI space, so my cutoff is, and it's not arbitrary, it's 2016, 2017, because that's when certain deep learning techniques emerged in the field of what I'm looking at. So, and I chose that from the papers I found, not really from arbitrary, right? I stopped there 5 years or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a good cut-off time. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've got a slightly higher level question. In certain fields, the story that's from several to point research is rather easy of conception, and I guess a rather famous example would be the end of the end goal of a lot of the physics research in terms of relativity and quantum physics right now is to find a unified theory, so that combining the quantum relativity. But in quant side, through the papers I've read, I don't really see an end goal for either transformer research or computer vision. There's no grand end goal. In your opinion, what do you think the end goal of machine learning research is?
That's a very big question. I think everybody has different answers to that. But if you are doing some research on the ground, we really think about it as we look at this single task. For example, we are doing some data generation, we are doing question answering, and really improve the performance on this task. And maybe you can combine some relevant tasks like an image generation and data generation, because they're similar, you can unify them. But we don't think we are at the stage where the AGI is coming. So we still need to separate and focus on specific technology. Yeah.
So for each domain, the end goal would be perfect performance. Is that what I
Yeah. Yeah. That's the most common way to grasp it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No more questions? Okay, I'll probably ask Suri to start online.
I think 3 will available at 3 p.m.
No, Suri says she will available anytime. Okay, Suri is online. Can you share the screen?
Thank you, everyone.
No, can you share the screen there, like on your
Share the screen, share.
Okay, okay.
So us here can see her why she is here. Yeah, here is the full screen. Just wait a minute. Here it is. Here it is. Oh, she's back.
Yeah, I can hear online. I'm not sure about the people.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah, we can.
they. Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
okay, good. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay.
Oh, okay, okay.
So us here and see what is the field. Yeah, here is the sports room. On to that.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear online. I'm not sure about the people
Yeah,
in
looks like.
person.
Yeah, we
they-
can.
Oh, we
Ah,
can.
okay,
Oh, great,
good,
great.
good.
Okay, let me share my screen. So I can start now, right? You ready? Everyone is ready, right?
Yeah, ready.
Okay, great, cool. Thank you, Dao Chang. So in the first part, Dao Chang has talked about the importance of literature review and how we can effectively find relative papers for our research and topics. So in this part, I will focus on how we manage these references. I don't know how many of you have struggled to keep track of all papers you have ever read for your research. And there are some common challenges in research writing when you manage your reference. So for example, you may be forgetting the sources. For example, when I want to write papers, I remember there are some points, some sentence I want to use from the paper I read before, but I cannot find it. So, and the second issue is incorrect citations, and the third issue is formatting issues. So, for example, if we cannot effectively manage these references, we may go to the website to manually create these citations. So maybe we're going to have different formatting. Some are APA, some are IEEE, and so on. So how we can address these challenges as we can use some tools or some softwares to manage references. We list three popular softwares: EndNote, Zotero, and Mendeley. So these three share very similar features. I will show you later in the following slides. And here are some YouTube tutorials. Each of them just like 15, but have a very detailed instruction on how to use them. And also you can directly export your reference in this software into the BIP file. And then you can import the BIP file to your LaTeX writing, for example, over Leaf tools, and then to write your papers. I will show you these steps later. So the first two, EndNote. EndNote is a paid software, and the key features are it has reference library, so which allow you to store and manage all your sources in one place. And the second feature is the browser plugin. So you have the plugin that you can just simply click it, and it will import the papers automatically into the library. And the EndNote support Firefox and Google Chrome. The third feature is a citation plugin, so which means after you create the library for your references, when you go to the Microsoft Word or Google Docs or the library office, you may find there's a plugin button that you can just simply click the button, and then you can choose which paper you want to create the citations and what style you prefer. And the next feature is PDF annotation. So which means you can make notes, write some notes, highlight or write comments to better organize your research papers. The next feature is collaboration, so which allow you to share a common, like a shared library that allowed all your team members to work on the same library, so you can share the papers and write comments and to share some ideas. The last feature is Cloud Sync. The Cloud Sync is very useful when you have multiple devices. So for example, when I read papers, I prefer to use iPad because I can pencil to write the notes and highlight. But when I write papers, I may go to my laptop or my computer. So if I have the Cloud Sync, I don't need to re-import the papers across different devices. I just use one device and then I log into my account, and all the data will sync to all my devices with my account. The second tool is called Zotero, and this one I will show you how to use it later. So Zotero is a free and open source software. It shares the same feature with EndNote, have the reference library, the plugin for browser, citation, PDF annotation, collaboration. But for the Cloud Sync, because it's a free and open source software, so it's only have around 300 megabyte storage. So if you want more, you can, but you have to pay for more space. The last tool is called Mendeley. So Mendeley also have the free options and share exactly features with the other two softwares or tools. But the only difference is for the cloud sync, it only has 2 GB free storage. So that also, if you want more, you have to pay for it. And now maybe let me demonstrate how to use Zotero. You can see actually these 3 softwares have very similar function, and just like you, which one you prefer to use. So here I will demonstrate Zotero, which is a free software. Let me go to my Zotero. Okay. So first, if you want to download these softwares, you just simply Google these names, and then you will find they have the official website. And then for the Zotero, I Google Zotero and then download. And here you will find you have 2 options to download. The first one on the left-hand side is the software. So here, because I'm using MacBook, so it's automatically set, say I can choose the Mac download. The other option is the browser plugin. So this one is called Zotero Connector. Here, because I'm using Chrome to demonstrate, but it also supports other browsers. You can see from here. Click this here, and you'll find, okay, if you are using Firefox, Edge, or just the Safari, you can also have this Zotero connector to link the Zotero with your browser. Okay, so after you download, and when you open the software, you will have a UI like this. So it has 3 main parts. On the left-hand side is your folder view. So all the references you create will be saved in your library. So here you can see you have a My, and in the My library, I have my publications. So you can import all your publications into this library, and it have duplicated items. I will show you how to use this one later. And the trash. And also you will have a group libraries, which allow you to create a library to share with your team. And at the bottom, there's a text. The text is you can add tag for your papers. For example, I feel this paper is about large language models. So I just create a tag for large language model. Or I feel this one is for multimodal. So I just create a tag for multimodal. I will show you how to use it later. And in the middle part is the list of your reference. After you import the papers into your library, and you will see the list here. And the last part is on our right side. It's when you select the reference, you will see the information on the right side here. Okay, let's see how we can manage your reference by using Zotero. So first, what I suggest you to do is to create an account. So how? You can go to the Zotero website, or you just simply click Zotero and settings. And here, because I already have an account, so I just already have my data syncing. If you haven't, there will have an option here let you to create your account and set your password. And then after you after you create, now let's manage our papers. So for papers, because you're gonna have different research topics, definitely you cannot put all the reference into the same folder. So what we usually do is to create the collections for different topic. So for example, I go to my library, right click, and new collection. And here the name for reading about language model. And then I create a collection. And you will see there's a folder create here called large language model. But definitely you can have subfolder. So for example, large language model is a very general, broad topic. So what if I want to see the applications? Then I can create right click, new sub collection. And for example, here I create a folder called mining. So which means, okay, in this folder, I have all the reference about the application of large language model in minings. And okay, after you create the library, the folders, you import your reference. There are 4 ways to import the papers. The first one is manually. So here in the middle windows, you will find there are 4 options, 4 buttons here. Click the first one, and you choose your reference type. For example, if it's journal, then you just click the journal article, and then you enter the title, author, publication, and other like date, DOI, and identifier informations. And definitely you can go to attachments, click the plus button, and you can link this reference to a local file. This is one way, but this is not a smart way, definitely. So the second way is we can use the paper identifier to import the papers. For example, now let's click the second option here. This one like a magic pencil. Let's click, and you will see the identifier, the Zotero support is like ISBN, DOI, PMIDs, and so on. So here, let's use one paper as example. For example, for example, now I'm reading this paper, and then I find, okay, here is the DOI identifier. So I just copy it and go back to my Zotero and click this pencil and paste, and then you click search. Now this paper's information has automatically imported. You don't need to manually input this information. But the problem is, okay, now if you click it, it will go to the web page. But the web page is not a good way for you to make notes. It's not like the local PDF files that we can write notes or highlight some sentences. So what we want to do is we also want to link this reference to paper. So what we can do, you can right-click this reference, and you'll find the option called Find Full Text. Click it, and it will search the PDF for you. Okay, it's done. So you can see it's one file edit, and then let's close it. You will see when there has an arrow in front of the paper, and click it, and you will see there's a PDF here. And now when you double click the PDF, then you can make notes. For example, I can maybe just highlight some sentence, or I just make some comment here, like, hey, read this paper, and so on. And also you can just have some text, or highlight the text, or the underline, and so on. Okay. This is the second way that you can import the papers. And the third way is we can use the browser plugin. So remember that we say in their website, it's not only have the software options, also have the connector, the plugin. So now let's see how we can use this plugin to import paper. So now, for example, I want to import this paper. So I can find the plugin button, which is this one. And then you can choose which folder or which collection you wanna save this paper. So here we can click more, and then sorry, it's so yeah, you can click the button and then choose more, and then you can choose which folder you want to choose. So here I choose maybe let's do a large language model, and then what you see is will import in your collection. So this is a second way. Sorry, this is a third way. And the fourth way is if you already download the PDF paper locally, For example, let me download the paper. Then what you can do is, you can just drag it to the folder. So for example, I want to drag it and then to the software, and we will see this paper will be imported to Zotero library. So this is a 4 ways that you can import your papers to the tool. The next function I wanna introduce is a tag. So you can see actually the papers, when we import the papers, the software already create some tags for us. So for example, for the first paper I click, there are 4 tags: AI, IR, and so on. So you can keep it if you like it, but if you are not, you can just delete it. Just delete it, and then create your own tag. For example, I click the add button, and this one maybe is called knowledge graph. You can have multiple tags for the same paper. And now when you go to the left side, if you click the tag knowledge graph, you will see, okay, only the paper with tag knowledge graph will show here, will show in the reference list. So this is a tag. And the next function is the duplicate items. So you can see sometimes we may forget we already read the papers, we already import the papers to the tool, to the software. So we're gonna have some duplicated items. So how to deal with it? When you find there are some duplicate items, you just click it, and on the right side you will find they have timestamp, and then you can see, okay, which one you want to keep. So for example, the first one, I already made a lot of notes, highlights, so I want to keep the first one. Then you just click the first one and click merge 2 items. And now you can see the two papers disappear from duplicate items because now there's only one left. So do the same for this paper. If you click, and this time I want to keep the second one, and then I merge. Okay, so now nothing in duplicate items, and in your collections, each paper only appear once. This is the duplicated items. The last one is how we can manage the bit file when you use LaTeX. How you can use Zotero to export the reference for your papers. So there are 2 ways. If you prefer to use Microsoft Word or Google Doc, you can install the plugin in Word, and then you will find, okay, there is an option in the header of Word. Then you click it. It will let you to choose, okay, which paper you wanna create citations and what the style. But here I wanna demonstrate how we can create the reference for LaTeX. So for example, here I wanna I will use these two papers in my LaTeX. Then you can select all, right click, export items. And then you can choose the format. So usually for LaTeX, we go for the first one. And then the UTF-8 look good, and then OK. And then you can choose the download folder and file name. So here I can call it ref and save in my downloads. Format is correct, save. And now let's go to the download folder. You can see there's a bit file generated. And now if you, I'm not sure which LaTeX tool you are using. So for me, I use Overleaf. So if I go to Overleaf, and if I want to import the file, I just upload, select files, and the bit file I just created, open.